Welcome to the Cajun Cook. I'm Warren Richard, and I'm going to cook a Louisiana favorite, seafood gumbo. It's fall, and when I was a kid in New Orleans in Louisiana, southern Louisiana, fall was always the beginning of gumbo season, and I always looked forward to the smell of my mom browning a roux on the stove because we knew gumbo was for dinner. So today I'm going to focus on seafood gumbo. Last year I cooked a chicken gumbo. The process is the same, the ingredients are different, and we'll get into why that's the case when I introduce the ingredients and we start cooking. I have my apron on. Let's start cooking. The Cajun Cook is ready. All right, so here are the ingredients for seafood gumbo. So in southern Louisiana, gumbo is either chicken and sausage or seafood. And it's very rare that the proteins are thrown in the pot all together. So it's either chicken or seafood, and I'm focusing on seafood. And why is that? Because seafood is very plentiful in southern Louisiana, and in rural Louisiana, every backyard had chickens. And of course, what else do you do with chickens? You either use them for eggs or you throw them in a pot and cook some gumbo. So let's focus on seafood gumbo. Shrimp, very plentiful in southern Louisiana, and it's fall. We're about to stir the roux, and let's go through the ingredients necessary to make seafood gumbo. So we're going to make a roux with a cup of flour, a cup of oil. I have a little bit of flour in case I want to thicken that up a bit more. I'm going to throw in some seasonings. Here I have 1 large onion, 1 bell pepper, 2 stalks of celery. I'm going to throw in 2 cloves of garlic that I have chopped finely. And then as I bring my ingredients together, I'm going to throw in my seasonings. So I have, of course, salt, pepper, have to have cayenne pepper. It's Cajun cooking. Who would cook Cajun food without cayenne pepper? Not this Cajun. My own Cajun spice mix. I'm going to pour in about 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, Louisiana hot sauce. It is Cajun food. Gotta have some hot sauce. And then I'm going to throw in 2 bay leaves. Once that gets going, this is going to be a layering of ingredients. So once I get my roux and then my seasonings together and it boils through, toward the end of the cooking period, I'm going to add 2 pounds of shrimp that have been peeled and deveined. Take out those veins, y'all. Nothing is nastier than gumbo with veins floating to the top. Who wants to eat that? I have 8 ounces of jumbo crab meat, jumbo lump crab meat. If you can't find jumbo lump crab meat or you don't want to splurge on that, lump is fine. And then I have 2 links of andouille sausage that I'm going to saute, throw into the pot. And then toward the end of my cooking time, I'm going to throw in a handful of shallots, some parsley. And what is this? This is filé. So seafood gumbo can be cooked with okra. Okra is a thickener. It is very common in Louisiana. Everyone's got an okra vine in the backyard. We're not in Louisiana, so we're going to make do with filé, which does the same thing. It is a thickener. It depends on how thick you want the gumbo, and I will show you how to add filé into the gumbo as we're going through the process. But don't use both. If you go with okra, don't use filé. If you're using filé, don't use okra, because then you're going to have a ropey, stringy gumbo. And if you haven't deveined the shrimp, veiny, gummy, stringy gumbo, and no one will want to eat it. And that's a shame. So let's start cooking seafood gumbo. Let's get started. So let's get started with making a roux. This is going to be a brown roux. It's not going to be a dark, smoky roux that I would make with a chicken gumbo. I'll speed up the process of making a roux. So go back to last year's video to see the various colors. But this is going to be a lighter roux. Here I am, a cup of peanut oil, in a pot Dutch oven that I've heated for a little bit. And you can see the oil has already heated. So I'm going to gradually add in my flour. Don't dump it in all at one time, because then it gets lumpy. And if your roux is lumpy, you can only do one thing with that. Dump it out. And I'm using a whisk. Gradually adding in my flour. A cup of flour, a cup of oil. And remember, your flame is always on low. Because there's another problem with a roux. You don't want a lumpy roux, and you don't want to burn the roux. Because if you burn the roux, there's only one thing you can do with it. Throw it out and start all over again. My grandmother would have a coffee can by her stove, and if she burnt the roux, that's where it went, in the Louisiana coffee can. There's nothing else you can do with it, really. All right, so I've incorporated my cup of flour, and you can see how smooth that is. That's what we want. And you know what? And you learn to do this by feel. I'm going to add a little more flour. I want a little more depth with my roux, so I'm going to add a little more flour. And this will take about 20 minutes. I'm going to pour myself a glass of wine, and I'm going to stir, stir, and stir again. See you in about 20 minutes. All right, so I have been stirring my roux. This is the color we're looking for, a bit darker than peanut butter. And now I'm going to add in my onions and bell pepper and celery, keeping my burner on low. And this will saute for about 5 minutes. Large teeth that did not stick the blade. All right, Cajun cooks. Now I'm going to ladle in my shellfish stock. This is about 3 quarts of stock, and I'm going to ladle a little bit at a time. I want to incorporate all of this liquid, but I'm going to do it gradually, not all at once. So here I go. That's some sizzling goodness there. All right, so once I add in my shellfish stock, I'm going to bring this up to a boil until it smooths out. And we just simmer for about half an hour. Then we add our seafood. So join me. This will take about 30 minutes. So grab a glass of wine, and we'll see you soon. So this has been boiling for 20 minutes. So this has come together quite nicely. It's nice and smooth, but I've been replacing my stock as the stock boils out. I've been replacing the liquid because we want to begin and end with about 3 quarts of liquid. So you add this gradually over time. Notice all the liquid, the seafood stock I've used. And now, fellow Cajun cookers, we're moving over to the simmer burner. And I'm going to reduce this to a simmer. It's been boiling for a while. And we can start adding some Cajun spices to this. It is gumbo, by the way. So I'm going to start with 2 bay leaves, 1, 2, some sea salt, and start moderately. You can always add spices later on. Some cracked pepper. And I started off with 2½ teaspoons of my own Cajun spice mix. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more. I will taste later on to see if it needs more of that. Cayenne pepper. Let's turn up the heat. This is fresh cayenne pepper, not stuff from the supermarket. So a little bit of this goes a long way. If it's from the supermarket, you can probably add a little more. So I'm going to stir my seasonings in here. I'm going to get this down to a simmer. In 10 minutes, I'm going to fry up my andouille sausage, throw that in there. Then we add our seafood. I haven't said anything about adding filé yet. I wonder why. Stay tuned. Time to add the andouille sausage. 2 links of andouille sausage. I'm going to saute this for a little while, dump it into our developing gumbo. And you do this to release the smoky flavors of the andouille. So I'm going to fry this up and then watch me dump it into the pot. All right, so I have released the smoky flavors of my andouille sausage. Fresh from Louisiana. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for providing me with this andouille sausage. I'm going to replace some of my liquid. And I'm going to let this gumbo soak up some of those smoky flavors and aromas. 10 minutes, and then we add our shrimp, we add our crab. What about that filet? I'll answer that question in a few minutes. In the meantime, we always serve gumbo with rice. I'm going to put a cup of rice boiling on the stove, and we'll have some seafood gumbo with rice and some local wines. I forgot to mention did I mention local wines? Local wines. So stay tuned. There's more Cajun goodness coming up. All right, Cajun cooks, time to add the seafood to the seafood gumbo. Why else would we call it seafood gumbo? 2 pounds of medium-sized shrimp. Don't get large prawns. Please don't do that. Not for seafood gumbo. Small to medium-sized shrimp. I have seasoned these with a little bit of salt, a little bit of black pepper, and some cayenne pepper, because it's Cajun food. So I'm going to throw in my shrimp and, pardon my reach, here I am with my Worcestershire sauce. And I'm going to turn the heat up to boil cook the shrimp through, about to medium, about 20 minutes. I'm going to add my crab meat. I'm going to add in my parsley and green onions. And we still have that filet to deal with. Stay tuned. I've been nursing a glass of wine. Of course, what else do you do all this time at the stove? So as I've been finishing my glass of white wine, through the roux, through the boiling process, the shrimp are cooked. I've sprinkled in some green onions. Delicious jumbo lump crab meat. Again, if you have lump crab meat, that's fine. In New Orleans, we have what's called gumbo crab. We don't have that up here in DC, but this will do. It's from the supermarket, and you add this at the end. So I'm going to fold this in. You want to keep the lumps together. And in about 5 minutes, we'll be ready to deal with the last ingredient, the filet. I'll keep you all in suspense with the filet. It's worth the wait. So here I go with my crab meat, and gently push that in, and I'm just going to do a folding motion. Join me in 5 minutes. I think it tastes pretty good. Do you want to taste it? All right, so we are ready for the final ingredient or two. So I'm going to turn my burner off, and I'm going to take the gumbo off the heat, and let's go in with some parsley. And filet. Here's when we add the filet. I've been cagey about this, a cagey Cajun, but not any longer. The secret will be revealed. So the purpose of filet is to thicken the gumbo. So you can see this is fairly thick, but this will thicken it even more. And we're going to serve this over rice. This is 2 teaspoons of filet, and filet comes from the sassafras plant. And it grows out in the wild in southern Louisiana. This is 2 teaspoons. I have read some recipes that would call for a tablespoon. I think that's too much. I think this is the right trick. The secret is to take the pot off of the fire. You don't want this to boil. When filet boils, the gumbo becomes very ropey, and that's yucky. So we're off the fire. I'm going to sprinkle in my filet. I'm going to mix it in, and it's going to hang out for 10 minutes, exactly 10 minutes. And then we will serve seafood gumbo with filet and local wines. See you in exactly, set your watches, 10 minutes. So while the gumbo is finishing its final simmer off the heat, let's reveal the Virginia wines that I'm going to pair with seafood gumbo. And let's start with Vidal Blanc from Grey Ghost Vineyards. In fact, I harvested grapes there last weekend, and this will be a lovely pairing with anything spicy. Nest from Slater Run Vineyards. This is a white wine blend. Has quite a bit of body to it, but very approachable and would go well with spicy food. If you want some red wine with chicken gumbo, I'm sorry, seafood gumbo. I'm ahead of myself. I'm thinking of Mardi Gras. This is an offering from Zephaniah Vineyards called Chalwa. This is very much like Pinot Noir. If you're going with red wine, go with something that is low in tannins and lighter bodied. And I could recommend this one. Put it in the fridge for about 15 minutes. I think it would be lovely. So these are the local wines I would pair with seafood gumbo. The Cajun has cooked, and it's time to eat. So the filet has done its magic. This is a nice thickened gumbo, and I have a spoon of rice in here. They have been expertly paired with wines from Virginia. If you found today's cooking show informative and you want to cook seafood gumbo, and I know you do, then subscribe, give me a thumbs up. And remember, Virginia wines usually can ship. Virginia wineries can ship to your state. So go to my wine blog, Virginia Wine Time, to find out more about Virginia wines. In the meantime, this Cajun cook is ready to eat some seafood gumbo. Cheers from the Cajun cook.